Welcome, Immigrant Nation. Another week, another new episode. I'm your host, Aaron Deliosa, and this is an Immigrant's Life podcast. As a weekly reminder, if you'd like to stay connected, you can follow me on social media. Our handle is at an Immigrant's Life. Also, feel free to send me an email at animmigrant'slife@yahoo.com. If you or someone you know would like to come on the podcast, that is the best way to get in touch avec moi. And once again, I want to thank you for listening and being part of this incredible journey. I appreciate you being here. Your support means the world to me, and your support inspires me every day. Yesterday, I had such a great ride with my friend. It's been a while since we rode our bicycles. We went for a 100-kilometer ride, and it was such a beautiful day. And I'm just grateful that we were able to do it. He was sick for a bit, under the weather, but I'm glad that he's better now. And just biking and seeing nature and feeling the wind on your face and the challenge of it, it makes me so grateful. I'm so grateful that I'm able to discover this sport, and I'm so grateful that I have the privilege to enjoy this sport. And speaking of grateful, I'm grateful for this week's guest because he's so generous with his time and his story, and he's so open. So I don't want to waste more time, and I want to talk about this week's episode. In this episode, we sit down with an Episcopal pastor hailing from Korea that now lives in Houston, Texas. He kindly reflects on the unique challenges he faces as a Korean-American pastor's son, including frequent relocations due to his father's ministry, discover his rebellious yet courageous act of being a United Methodist pastor to become an Episcopal pastor. We take the complexities of being a first-generation Korean-American in a Korean-American church, navigating microaggressions in predominantly white churches. Amidst declining church attendance trends, his steadfast faith remains a beacon of hope. And we also explore the profound joys and challenges of parenting a child with autism, showcasing the resilience and love within his family. Tune in for an enlightening conversation filled with wisdom and heartfelt reflection. And let's not waste more time. Without further ado, let's get into the show. Isa, dalawa, tatlo. Today's guest is an Episcopal pastor that will leave you shouting, "Hell yeah," when he preaches, because he's just that damn good. Everyone, please welcome Joseph Yu.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Aaron.
Hey,
Great to be here.
It's such an honor, such a pleasure. I love that I reach out to you and you say, "Oh, I'm busy," which completely makes sense. And then I'll reach out. And I want to reach out back to him because I would love to have a conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, you reached out during the Lent season leading up to Easter, and I was like, I would love to, but right now we're a little bit swamped. So if you want to reach out after Easter, I'll be a lot more free. And you reached out after Easter, so here we are, and I'm grateful to be here.
I'm grateful too. Of course, sometimes I don't even think. Sometimes people will just say to me, "Oh, it's long weekend." I'm like, "Why?" And they'll tell me why. I'm like, "Oh, okay." I don't even, it doesn't even come to me. But yeah, actually, Easter is one of my favorite holidays because,
Good.
First of all, it's close to my heart because, I was raised Catholic, so that was a thing. And then eventually when we bought a house, it became that every Easter celebration, I invite all my family here and we have our, gathering.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
Before we get into all the good stuff, why don't you tell the Immigrant Nation where they can reach you or if you want to promote anything?
Yeah, they can find me on social media. I think all of my both Instagram and TikTok is my name, joseph.u, spelled Y-O-O. And I also have a book called, what's it called? I have my books are holding up my my computer. When the Saints Go Flying In, and it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, I love the title of this book why did you title the book that with that name?
It's a book about it's not really about saints, but I use saints, the story of some saints, to tell a my story and a broader story. And one of the things that really had a song that had a really significant impact in my life late in my career. It's not even a Christian song. It's Bob Marley's Three Little Birds. And so I was telling that story, and I already knew what the cover was going to be. The cover was going to be this artist that I found on that I met in through Instagram. Her name is Kayla, and she drew do the artwork for my book. And actually, let me lower one down. And so she gave us this is her artwork, and we were going to make that the cover. And someone suggested, why not? One of the publishers was like, hey, why don't we just name it three when the Saints go flying in, as a play on the Saint when the Saints go marching in. And I was like, all right, that's a lot better than anything I thought of, so let's go with it.
Do you remember what's the original title?
No, I actually don't. I don't think I had a title. I had a subtitle. The subtitle is Stories About Faith, Life, and Everything in Between. So that was not a strong enough title that said, so we had to come up with a title. And thankfully there was other people who were able to look at it from the outside and have a clear picture. And they came up with that name, and it's no, we can't go back anymore. So that's what the book's called.
It's printed. Your name is there. It's not changing. I love that. Again, I told you I grew up Catholic. I mean, like my grandma used to say, like "Católico cerrado" is like you are not changing. You're gonna be Catholic forever. And
Yeah.
I used to love saints too. And I like study
Did you have a
saints.
favorite, or do you have a favorite saint?
Okay. None specifically, but so in Filipino tradition, if a child is a sickly child, which I was a sickly child growing up, an adult will go to a saint and promise to that saint that if you make this kid healthy, I promise you he will be devoted to you. So
Okay.
that saint that I was promised to was I don't know his English name, but his Spanish name is San Diego.
Okay.
So that was his name. I think he's a priest of something. I forgot. So growing up, every time it's his feast, I have to go to the town, which is like 2 towns over where I grew up, and I have to show respect.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I wonder if it's the same San Diego that the city's named after.
Probably like he's the dude like he holds a big cross. That was his one of
I
his
wouldn't
like
know.
because
I
I know
recently I was gonna say I recently so growing up, I grew up like in a more of an evangelical. I grew up at United Methodist, but our church style was more evangelical, and a lot of Southern Baptist and evangelical churches do not like the Catholics,
I
and one of
don't
the reasons
blame
why they
you.
don't like, well, one of the reasons, I mean, it's not for like, I mean, there are a certain group of Christians that believe that Catholics will not go to heaven, and one of the contingent part is because of the prayer to the saints, right? Because you should only pray to Jesus. You can't pray to whatever, all that stuff. And so I never paid attention to any of it. Like I knew like the famous ones like Saint Francis and whatnot. But actually what really started me getting on this book was during my first meeting at an Episcopal, when I decided to become Episcopalian, someone on the table during lunch asked me what my favorite saint was. And I thought I was like, that's not a thing. But apparently everyone at my table had a favorite saint. And so that's what that was the impetus that was the reason why I started writing this book, to figure out who my favorite saint is, along with writing stories about faith, life, and everything in between.
I love it. I also considered being a priest when I was younger.
You did good by not doing it.
I know. No,
No,
but
seriously, I tell people, like people who want to go into ministry, I sit them down and ask them, "Are you sure? Like this is not unless you know that this is your vocation, unless you know that this is what your life is being called to, it's not worth it. Okay, I mean, like, the funniest thing about social media is that I've learned is they have a very warped mind about what church is. So they think like every pastor they see on TikTok is like millionaires. And I'm like, no, the average size of the church in the United States is about 70 people. And the average budget of a church is about $150,000 for the entire church. So like most of us pastors are not rich. We are borderline poverty, like or middle class and whatnot. So yeah, it's there's no pay in the job. I mean, if you go into ministry thinking you're making money, you're gonna wake up, you're gonna be thoroughly disappointed. So it's always like if you don't feel it in your bones, if you don't think you can't do anything else but this, if that's not there, then go make money and support the church that way. You know?
I like that point. Yeah. Well, I was young and I was so into like the Bible and I was so close to my grandma. So I was like, maybe I want to be a priest. And also, I went to a Catholic school. So it's a
Yeah.
culmination of like, of
Yeah.
those things. I'm like, maybe I'll just go priest. And then I remember there was two options. There's one priest that quote unquote makes money. And then there's another group that like no money at all. I forgot the difference, but I'm like, I'm gonna do the no money because if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna go do it through faith. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I realized there's this thing called girls. And that was that.
I was
Over.
gonna say, hey man, Catholic priests have another layer of difficulty. Like, people always because I wear the collar that's more associated with the Roman Catholics. And they're like, "Are you Catholic? Are you a priest?" And I say, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not a Catholic priest. I'm an Episcopalian priest." Because a lot of times I have my son with me, and I don't want it's like this is my son. That's why I'm not a Catholic priest. But anyway, yeah, there's the Catholic priests. Bless their hearts, they have a whole different level of commitment that I don't think is for everyone.
Yeah, I'm not joking. Like, if it wasn't for that, if I found out there's other churches that you can get married, I would probably become, at that moment, at least, I would probably a priest or a pastor. I mean,
Yeah, but you know what? If you had left the Catholic Church and your grandma was still if your grandma was alive, she'd be devastated, I feel like.
no, she'll kill me.
She said you're always gonna be a Catholic. She'll kill you.
I'm not joking. She would kill me. I remember because I always love learning religion,
Yeah.
and I used to go to like different churches, but without her knowing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it'll be a bad thing, right? So I'll go to different churches, and like I'll find it like, oh, the Baptist and whatever else. I'm like, oh, this is cool. There's a different perspective, And I
Yeah.
remember she found out that I used to go to this church. I came
no.
home and she's like, hey. I said, what's up? Where did you go? I said, oh, I just went to the service there. And she's like, are you still Catholic? I said, yeah. And it's like, you better be.
You better be. Wow.
And I never came back to the service. That was that. But I just love the different perspective, Even though I grew up Catholic, I always wanted to see a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. That's really good.
Yeah. Speaking of that, like, what's the difference between your church or Episcopal? I forgot.
Episcopal. It's hard to say too.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that and Catholic. What's the main difference?
Well, for really, really church history in a nutshell, the Episcopal Church belongs to the Anglican tradition, and the Anglican tradition started. The Church of England started in whenever King Henry was in power, and he wanted to divorce to marry a new woman. And the Pope said, no, you can't do that. That's not good. And then the king basically said, watch me. And he tore he started his own church and became the Church of England. And so you had the Pope that oversees the rest of the church, and you had the King of England that oversees the Anglican Church, the Church of England. And then, and then how the Episcopalians came about is when the United States won the Revolutionary War and they're making their government and writing out the Declaration of Independence and all that. It was like, well, our government isn't under the King of England, so why should our religion be under the Church of England? So they split from the Anglican group and became Episcopalian. Now, overall, there is very similar. There's actually something called Anglo-Catholics, where the Episcopal Church is just basically looks a Catholic, a devout Catholic could walk in and nothing would be different the way the church is done. Um, I think big picture wise, it's fairly similar, but there are small things that like how we approach communion. Um, the Catholic Church believes that the wine and the bread or the wafer miraculously becomes the actual body and blood of Christ. Anglicans and most Protestants believe that the presence of Christ is there, but it's not the actual blood and body of Christ. And also just how the church is run. We don't have a pope that oversees the entire church. We don't have like archbishops and whatnot. So the way that the church is governed is different. But I think all the Christians will uphold the basic tenets of the creed. Most churches, both Catholics and Episcopal and Anglicans, believe in the Trinity, the virgin birth, the resurrection, and all that stuff. So those big points everyone agrees on. It's just the little things and how we get to the points that's slightly different.
I should have been an Episcopalian because whatever you just said, like growing up, like that makes sense to me. Like,
yeah.
even
And then
you,
you still would have been a priest and got married, so you would have been okay if you.
but then I told you,
but
I
not
would
with
have
your
been
grandma.
dead. You know, I don't want to be dead. But yeah, because like you said about the body of Christ, the wine, that for the Catholics, like it literally turns into Jesus. I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, I don't think so, dude. Because it's a wafer and wine. I feel the spirit of Jesus more than me believing that.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have crosses, but you guys don't have like statues, right?
Well, I don't know. I can't say. But most of our crosses don't have the body of Jesus hanging on it. That's a predominantly a Catholic thing to have the actual body hanging on the cross. Most Protestants wear crosses with just the cross.
Yeah. Do you guys use the rosary as well?
Actually, the Anglican have their own rosary. I didn't. I learned that like last year. The Episcopalians and the Anglican Church have their own rosary. So I've never prayed with a rosary, so I wouldn't even know if they're similar or maybe the same thing. But there are some Episcopalians that use the rosary.
Okay. Oh, I don't know anything else. I know my Catholic rosary, and that's it. I didn't know there's a different one. But that's it. Let's put some background on you. You are ethnically Korean.
Yes.
Were you born in Korea?
Yes, I was born in Korea in a little city called Pohang, where I won't be able to locate it on the map. So, and we moved to the States when I was 6 years old.
6 years old. Okay. What prompted the move?
I think my mom's side of the family had already all moved to the States. And I think they were telling my mom just how much of a more better future they could provide for me because my brother wasn't born yet. And whatnot. And I think that was what finally convinced my parents to move. And when both my parents made a big sacrifice for sure, but when I look at it, I think my dad made a slightly bigger sacrifice because at least we were moving to at least my mom was moving to where her family was. My dad was leaving his social network behind. He was leaving his friends, his family, his work behind, and moving to a new country and trying to navigate life there. So I can't imagine. I mean, but again, both of them took tremendous amount of risk, but I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for them to try to navigate this life in this new land and with the language that they don't speak. And actually, truth be told, my parents still speak very limited English. So when like in a couple of weeks, I have to head out to my dad's doctor's appointment because he just needs uh, a translator. And it's really sad because my Korean is awful. But between my broken Korean and his understanding of English, we're able to get what the doctor's trying to say to us. And whenever the doctor uses like huge like medical terms, I'm like, hold up, hold up, hold up. Can you talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old? Because that's pretty much where my Korean is. Like my Korean's a kindergarten level because we moved when I was in kindergarten. And so the doctors have always been really helpful and whatnot too. So I think genuinely it was for them to provide a better future for me. And then my brother came about 2 years later. So yeah.
Were your dad a pastor?
Yes, my dad was a pastor, and in that first year of California, when we moved to California, he was without a job, and I'm pretty sure that was very, very difficult for him to relocate and not have a job, whatnot. But in about a year later, in 1987, we moved to South Carolina, and because my dad had found a church that was going to hire him, and so
How?
um, what do you mean how?
How did he find the church?
Oh, sure, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So my dad was United Methodist, and he contacted his Methodist colleagues that he knew, connections. Some people would say you should talk to this person, and then he got connected to one person, and there was a Korean church looking for a pastor, and he was invited to come. So yeah, that's at least that's what I think would have happened.
Was it challenging to grow up as a pastor's son?
Yes, especially in the Korean church. Yes, it was. It was. And I'm generalizing here too, but it seems like a lot of the Korean churches tend to put a lot of attention and stress and expectations on the pastor's family because you're the representation of God, so therefore you should be like really good. So there was a lot of expectations. I remember like this was like when I was in high school in Hawaii. I was hanging out with my friends, and this was the late 90s, like probably 90, 98 or whatnot. And like in those days, everything was baggy. You were baggy shorts, baggy shirt. Like it was like everyone was embracing the 90s hip hop era. And so uh, I was in the mall with my friends and just wearing, the baggy clothes, baggy jeans and whatnot. And my mom calls me. No, so this was in 99 because I had a cell phone. My mom calls me and she said, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm at Pearl Ridge Mall." And he goes, "What are you wearing?" I'm like, "What do you mean, what am I wearing?" She's like, "Well, she's like, I just want to know what you're wearing. Did you change between, leaving home and going to the mall?" I was like, "No, mom, you saw what I was wearing. I said bye to you. I'm wearing the exact same thing." And she's like, "Okay, good, because someone from church called me saying that you're out there just like a thug with your friends walking around the mall." I was like, "What?" Like, and I was like, who does that? So yeah, there was it was interesting.
Were there times that you just wanted to be a kid and, avoid all those pressure?
Oh, absolutely, but you can't. I mean, like, I have to go to church, like, it's even worse if the pastor's kid don't come to the pastor's church. So like, I'm always at church, and people are always like, yeah. I mean, of course, I would have want to not been there, but there was no escape for me.
You jumped over there because you mentioned that you moved to California and then South Carolina, and then you just passed by that you were in Hawaii. How did you end up in Hawaii?
Same reason. So there was so we I was 6 years old when we moved to Los Angeles. Then we moved to South Carolina when I was 7. We were there for 5 years, and then my dad got a new job in a city called Santa Barbara, California. So we moved to Santa Barbara. We moved back to California. We were there for 4 years, and then my dad got another job offer in Hawaii. And so we moved to Hawaii when I just finished my sophomore year in high school. So I moved to Hawaii pretty late, but it's the longest place that we lived as a family in the United States. and it's really I rather say I'm from Hawaii than say like, oh yeah, I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. Um, and so yeah, I moved to Hawaii when I was 16 because I already had my license.
Was it hard to keep on moving as a child?
Yeah, it was, but United Methodist Church. So I grew up as a my dad's a pastor of was a United Methodist pastor, and the Methodist Church kind of works like the military. The bishop tells you where to go. So if and usually in a geographical boundary. So like so we moved around a lot as a family, and as after I got married my wife and we moved around quite a bit too. I think we moved like almost every 2 or 3 years, and we've been in Texas since 2016, and that's the longest. And so we've been here for almost 8 years. That is the longest we've been anywhere as a married couple. This is the longest we've been. So it was difficult for sure because as you get older, you have friends, and this wasn't the days of Facebook or Snapchat, whatever. Like you had to actually write letters, physical letters to your friends, right? Like and I kept in touch with a lot of them. I got funny enough when Facebook became a thing, I got re-contacted, like got in touch with them once more. But life has changed. We're all much older and whatnot. But yeah, it was difficult, but I think what it also did was made our core family stronger. My brother and I are 7 years apart, but we were as close as 7-year-old, a 14 and a 7-year-old can be, and but it was one of the things where I didn't have any, when you first like when we moved to Hawaii, we moved in the summer. And so school hasn't started. Like I don't know anyone. So like my brother was, I was 16, he was 9. My brother was 9. There wasn't much we do, but I'd still hang out with him. We had something to do. We go out. I could drive. We'd go like get ice cream, just explore the city and whatnot. So it did for us. I can't say for every family, but for our family, it made us more stronger as a family unit because for at least a season, we were the only ones that we knew each other. Like we were the only ones that had. They were the only ones I had to talk to, basically.
You said that you used to be a United Methodist under United Methodist Church, and then you moved to Episcopalian. What
Yes.
prompted the change?
Long story short, the bishop was trying to move me to a city that I did not think would be a great fit for myself and for my family, especially for my son. And I said I didn't want to make that move. And you're generally not supposed to say no to the bishop. And
He's the
so
boss.
the bishop, yeah, exactly. So I had a couple of options, and none of them was really looking well. And then a friend from the Episcopal Church approached me with this idea to start a church. And after a couple of weeks thinking about it, no, it was probably a couple of months. After a couple of months of thinking about it, talking to my family, my wife, trusted people, I felt that maybe this was probably the best situation for me, and that's it. I was like, all
Did
right,
you
I
have to
guess.
do anything special, like I don't know, get baptized again to be a priest? You know what I mean?
Uh, Yeah. So no, we most the Catholics and all the mainline denominations, the Catholics, the Presbyterians, the Lutherans, the Episcopalians, and the Anglicans, we don't rebaptize. If you got baptized in another church or another tradition, we believe that it's still good. So if a Catholic person came to the Episcopal Church and they were baptized by the Catholic priest, we'd be like, good, you're baptized, you're good. I did have to go through a different ordination process though, and had to do all the ordination tests and exams and whatnot, and that wasn't fun. But also, it was it wasn't as difficult as my Methodist ordination process. So um, it was I felt that it was necessary for me to get ordained again in a different denomination, and so I went through another ordination process. Other than that, there wasn't that much I had to do. Thankfully, they didn't make me take more school. Because sometimes when you transfer over to another denomination, they want you to take a history course from seminary about their denomination history and whatnot. And for whatever reason, I must have caught my bishop at a good day, or he was like, he's fine. And I didn't have to do, I just had to get ready for the ordination exam. So I was really grateful for that.
How long does it take to do the whole course?
The Episcopal Church, I don't know, because I haven't started from the beginning. My bishop kind of made it so that I go through the process faster. But in the Methodist Church, it can take as short as 6 years and as long as 10 to 12. It's a long process. And it's a very difficult process. And it's a very subjective process because, you peers or it's determined by people and that, and you have to provide answers that make sense to them. And so you might say something that one person agrees with wholeheartedly and another person disagrees with wholeheartedly. And so but you have to hope for the best and they after your exam they talk to one another and then they go back and forth. Is this person ready for ministry? Should we let them wait a year and whatnot? And so it becomes a very long process. It can become a very long process. I mean, it took me 3 tries as a Methodist pastor to get ordained. Like I failed twice, and I was like, the third time I was like, this is it. If I don't get ordained, I don't want to put myself through this anymore. So yeah, it's not an as easy of a process as people may think it is, because you have like the Southern Baptist and the evangelical people who you just tell the pastor, I want to be a pastor. And they're like, okay, I think you're ready. And then he will ordain them. And that's that, right? Like, we don't have that option. We have to go, like we have requirements. You have to have a master's of divinity. You have to go to graduate school and you have to pass the exams. And part of it, I think, is to provide, to make sure that we don't have just like super crazy people. Because at least you'll have educated crazy people because you have to have the Masters of Divinity, you have to have that master's degree. But yeah, it is not an easy process. So another reason why I tell people like that want to go into ministry is like, hey, just really really think about it, because it is not a walk in the park. There are some good things, there's some bad things, and there's some things that want to make you pull your hair out. And one of the most disheartening things is watching people who proclaim the love of Christ behave completely differently in a church meeting, and then the next Sunday you have to be like, "Hi," like it's a very people are people, and some people are very mean and nasty, and then you still have to be their pastor. So it's just like this weird thing. So anyway,
That is
yeah.
hard, yeah. You wrote something about your experience at a first generation church as a Korean American. Can you
I
elaborate on
did.
this?
So there's usually in like Korean American churches in Korean churches in America, in the United States, a lot of them are done in Korean. So like people who immigrated to the United States will often look for a Korean church because even if they're not Christian, because that social network is there, right? Like you go to a big Korean church and all the who's who of Koreans are going to be there, and not only that, you get to make business, you maybe look for a job, make social contacts and whatnot. So a Korean speaking church for the Korean immigrants is very, very important because, like that language is there. But then these people start having kids, and these kids go to English speaking schools. They hang out with English speaking people, and they English becomes their primary language, and to the point where the Korean starts fading away. So then you have this group of usually young people that don't speak Korean, and the church has to do something with them because they're just there. So then they start this thing called English ministry, where all the thing is done in English. And so they bring oftentimes a second generation or a Korean American that speaks English fluently. Preferably they like pastors that could speak English without the Korean accent, so that all the kids can understand. And so you have these two groups that are in community one with it, but there's also a lot of tension because you have the first generation church that views the world differently because they're still Korean. Their mentality is Korean. And the most strangest thing is like a lot of people who, what they have, the Korea that they have in their mind is the Korea that they left. So they're recreating the Korea that they left in this church, right? But the truth is Korea is also evolving. So a lot of times when like new Koreans move and go to this church, they also have a different issue because you have these culture expectations, right? That these first generations carry, like be respectful to the elders, bow every time you see them, and whatever. And then these new wave of Koreans are coming in, and that culture expectation no longer exists in Korea, but it exists in this part because this here used to they think is Korea from the 90s. So you have all these weird tension, and then you have the second generation and beyond churches who are more American than Korean. They think more American. They go to American school, they watch American media, they hang out with American friends, and so it's easy to think that their worldview is going to be completely different from their parents' worldview. And so then, these tensions start to happen. And sometimes they're able to coexist, and other times they don't. And sometimes it comes to a point where the Korean American pastors are like, "Yeah, I don't need to deal with all the stress that comes with being a part of a Korean community." So a lot of them would start leaving. So and that happened to me too. Like I never thought that I would leave the Korean church, but after a while, I just looked at my life, and I was like, it doesn't need to be this way. And so I left the Korean church and started working in predominantly Anglo churches, and I guess I have never looked back after since.
You felt welcome when you moved to the Anglo church.
I mean, yes, but bless their hearts. Like a lot of the people,
So
they just
Texas,
have
by
like,
the way, let me just say,
I know
bless their heart.
they and usually not a good thing. Like my one of my churches I worked at, anytime an Asian person walked in the building, they're like, someone come up to me, it's like, "Hey, I think your family's here." And I look at them, and it's like a Filipino family, and I'm like, we're not even the same Asian. Like our skin tone is slightly different, but all they think is Asian, right? And then my first ever white church, I after my I was an associate pastor, and after I got to say my introduction to them, I got to speak to them and whatnot and say hello, describe myself. This lady comes up to me and she goes, and she's not being mean. She's being genuine, and she's like, "I'm so glad you speak English so well because we were really afraid that when we saw you that you might have a heavy Asian accent." And in my mind, I'm thinking, what the heck? But and surface on the outside, I'm like, oh, huh, I've been here for 30 years. I would hope that I speak English well. Like I still have grammar problems, but like, my accent isn't an Asian accent. It's a mix of Hawaii, California accent, whatever. So it's a little, we still, they're called microaggressions of racism, and you still like run into it every once in a while, and sometimes it's surprising that it happens, and sometimes you're like, oh yeah, that tracks. I should have expected that. So, overall, they were welcoming, yes, and but there was a lot of like navigating and which like you can't fight everything because you're going to be exhausted. So like you got to figure out which things you're just going to ignore and which things are you going to address. And and the thing about the mainline denomination churches, like my first church, the average age was like 60 or 70. So you're just you're like, okay, well, they're old, and let's just oh, the one thing that people were calling me Oriental. And I was like, okay,
I love that.
let's track it back a little. Like, let's not call people Oriental. Like, I know that you would, but if you could call people Asian, and you can call like the material stuff Oriental, like the Oriental rug, the Oriental Trading Company, or the Oriental like cup or Oriental dishes. But like for the people, can we name it Asian? So I had to pick which battles to fight. And the other weirdest thing was, like I said, most of these people were much, much older than me. And I had so many people, men, come up to me and say, "Oh, I was in Korea before." I'm like, "Oh yeah,
Oh, here
where?"
we
It's like,
go.
"When? Where?" During the Korean War. I'm like, "Oh, thank you." And it really bothered me at first, but then like when I sat back and thought about it, like first of all, on paper, we have nothing in common. Like here's a 70-year-old white man and a 2007, 2008, and a 28-year-old Asian Korean person. Like, what do we have in common? And this was one of their ways to try to find a common ground with me, right? Like Korea was the one thing that we had in common. Granted, their idea, I mean, like they had a different idea what Korea was about. So like instead of getting mad, I was like, all right, they're just trying to connect, and this is their way to find a common ground with me. So let's give them credit for trying. Um, and let's not like shame them for trying to find a common ground with someone who's 50 years younger than them and have a completely different world experience. So generally, people are welcoming, but as a minority when you're the minority in a predominantly white church, there's a lot of navigating that you have to do, and a lot of like, okay, do I address this or do I let it go? Yeah.
How did you learn to navigate that? Because you didn't have that before.
It's just one was like I have so many things to do, like fighting with every single person is not worth it. And then like if you look at stuff when you realize that they're just genuinely trying to when I feel like they're just trying to connect with me, then like whatever. And then there are times where they just don't know, they're ignorant. And it's like but it's just how honestly it's the question, where are you from? Right? Like if I say oh yeah, no, I'm from Hawaii. It doesn't end there.
No, it
People are like,
doesn't. Never.
were you sometimes I'll when they ask me, were you there before, were you there for your entire life? Sometimes I'll say no, I moved there when I was in high school, but I was born in Korea, to kind of like end the game. And sometimes I feel bored, and they're like, well, where were you before that? California. Oh, were you in California your life? No, I was like, before that I was in South Carolina. It's like, oh, you from South Carolina? I was like, no. And so, but like that question, where are you from? When it's that first answer for many people is not satisfactory, because they think that we're automatically othered, right? Like they think that I'm not from here because I look like this. And again, it's like, do I be a jerk about it, or do I just let it go? And so it's because a lot of times they do just want to know where you're from, but or what are you? But they can't
Yeah.
ask that
They
because
don't
they
know
know
how
that's
to
really,
ask it.
really bad. Yeah. And so but because Hawaii is so exotic, sometimes Hawaii is enough for them too. But it's just navigating these things and figuring out what you think is important to address, and what you think would give you sanity if you just let it go.
Has your faith ever been tested to the point that you almost abandon it?
I can't say that I've ever felt like abandoning the faith altogether. Um, but there are plenty of times where I look at the church, not just my church, this church in Big C, like all the churches, and I'm just like, do I really want to do this? I mean, there are times where I want to abandon my job, or my being a pastor, but I haven't yet come to a point where obviously what how I approach faith has changed dramatically over the years, for sure. But I still cling on um, to this thing that I believe is real, and nothing has. And if people want to have like debates about it, I'm the worst debater. I'm like, I don't care. Okay, cool, yeah. Defend myself. I don't feel the need to defend myself. Like, like whatever. So it works for me, and I personally feel like the most uh, purpose-filled, meaningful life you can live is following Christ, and I'm going to share that story. And if you think so too, great. If not, we could still be friends. Like I don't, like so. I never. It's not to say that my faith's never been tested, but I never. There's something in me that won't let it go. So, but there are plenty of times where I was like, yeah, maybe I should go back to school so I can learn how to do a different job. And maybe I'll just maybe like I'll just support the church as a volunteer because I don't know if I want to do this as a living anymore. So yeah, those times and believe me, there I am not the only pastor or priest that has ever struggled with with their calling and to see if they wanted to leave it all behind. And I'm pretty sure there are lots of pastors that struggle that had struggles with doubt and whatnot. But I also want to tell your listeners that it's okay to doubt. Like that's not the opposite of faith isn't doubt. The opposite of faith is fear. So if you're struggling, if you're doubting, it's okay. Every single one of the disciples doubted, and Jesus didn't reprimand them. He didn't kick them out. He still continued to love them. So, um, uh, yeah, I don't think I ever. There's just something in me that just won't let it go.
In your opinion, in general, are there fewer churchgoers now?
Yeah, absolutely.
And why do you think is that?
Uh, a lot of it is who knows, but a specific reason why many people are leaving the church today is that the idea of Christianity's teaching, the teachings of Jesus, does not align with what the churches are doing. So, and there was a from 2020 to like maybe 2019 to 2023, everyone talked about this phrase called deconstruction. That was like the hot topic word amongst churches. And deconstructing people was simply, they grew up Christian, went to church all their lives, and now they're just walking away because something doesn't make sense. And if you listen to these stories, a lot of it had to do with the elections. Like, you people, someone told me all my life I was told to do this, be like this because the Bible said so. And then in the past 5 years, all those people who taught me to be like that were doing the complete opposite. And so it's like, what the heck? And they couldn't reconcile that. And so they're like, why am I putting myself through this? And they walk away. And also people have a hard, I guess the one thing I can say is the church has made it easy for people to walk away. In the sense that a lot of us don't, we put the wrong focus on the wrong thing. We instead of, like you have the televangelists who are making $60 million and living in $50 million homes and asking people to send them money. We haven't made it hard for people to leave. And so you look at these people and you see how rich they're, and then a couple of months ago, you had that pastor in Colorado who scammed his congregation for $3.5 million for a cryptocurrency, and then said, God told me to use $1 million of that to renovate our kitchen. And you hear these stories, and it's like, oh my God, like, of course, like. There's no it doesn't a lot of times what we preach don't match our actions, and people see that right away. At one point in the early 2000s, the second or third about 5,000 non-Christians under the age of 35 were given, maybe it was 10,000, was given a survey about what the churches was known for. And the top 4 answers were, the top answer was the church is known for hating the gay people. And number 2 or number 3, I can't remember which one's which, but number 2 or number 3 was hypocritical, and the other one was judgmental. I want to say judgmental was number 2 and hypocritical was number 3. And then the fourth one was love. And it's like, there's a song, like, they will know we are Christians by our love. But no, in the early 2000s, over too many people under 35 associated Christianity with being hateful towards gays, being hypocritical, and being judgmental. And so we've made it easy for people to walk away, because if people are thinking that we're judgmental and we're hypocritical, like, yeah. And don't get me wrong, everyone is hypocritical and everyone is judgmental, but it just hurts more when it comes from people saying you shouldn't do that, but they do it themselves. I think that's Like people are hypocritical, but you don't see people standing in front of a whole group of people like completely being hypocritical, right? Like so yeah, there is a there always has been a decline, but the decline post-pandemic has, I think, gone faster. Um, but I don't think spirituality has gone down, but I think people not going to churches has come down.
Yeah, I agree with that because a lot of people are more doing other things now other than like going to Jesus or whatever, you know?
Right, right.
On a different note, did you always want to be a pastor?
No. Um, the story, no, like literally the story is that when I was 4 years old, like 4 years old, apparently I went to my dad and I asked him if I could be a pastor like him. Oh, let's rewind before that. Apparently when my mom was pregnant with me, and this was way before like ultrasounds and whatnot, she said she would go to church like at least once a week and pray to God and say, if you give me a son, I will dedicate my son to ministry. And I'm like, dude, that's so unfair. And my and my Korean name is Sung-ung, and it means holy man. Like so, like
No
I
pressure.
think like they were, yeah, I think they were trying to hint at something. So at the age of 4, I apparently told my dad, asked my dad if I could be a pastor like him. And like the prophecies fulfilled, right? Like my both my parents were ecstatic, and my dad helped me to that. At one point, he would call me little reverend you in Korean. You know, there's like 작은 유 목사. That's what he would say, which literally means little reverend you. He would tell all the church people. He would tell all of his colleagues and friends that my son's going to be a pastor when he grows up. And of course, like you want to be like your dad. And so I would always say, yes, I'm going to be a pastor just like my dad. And then like when I start hitting teenage years, I realized like, yeah, that's not that really cool of a job, right? Like, and then I see how church people behave, and I'm like, why would I want to commit my life to that? But I was not gonna tell my dad no because I was still scared of him, right? So,
Korean.
and yeah, and so like um, at my last year of college, I had my undergrad in psychology, and I really thought that I wanted to go be a psychologist. And so I'm trying to figure out how to approach this with my dad. And so what my plan was, I was gonna apply to graduate school for psychology at University of Hawaii because at that time they had a really, I don't know if they still do, but definitely at the time they had a really strong psychology program in all of the nation. So, and then once I got in, I was gonna go to my dad and say, hey, I got into grad school. Um, I'm not saying I'm never gonna do ministry, but I'm gonna try to do this first. But before even I could even like gather my applications, my dad on the weekend of my 23rd birthday forced me to go to Chicago to go to a conference. And here's like a culture difference. All of my like non-Korean friends, all my white friends were like saying, "Oh, well, why don't you say no? Just don't go." I'm like, "You guys, like you don't understand. Like I guess we don't, but like, my mom told me like you're almost 23, dude. You could say no to your dad." I'm like, "Yeah, I know how old I am, but doesn't fly in my household. I'm gonna go. I have to go." And when I went to that conference, that's when I realized, oh man, what makes sense in my life, what felt right in my life was to go to seminary and not go to grad school. And so I didn't go into seminary planning on being a pastor. I just knew that it just made sense. Like there's no way to describe it. Like everything just snapped into place. And I was like, seminary is the next place I need to do. That's the next chapter of my life. And so, um, uh, and like I'm pretty sure my dad probably knows now by listening to all the things I say, or like I think I've maybe even mentioned that in the book. But like as far as he's concerned, I've always wanted to be a pastor since the age of 4, and I'm not gonna if he still believes that way, I'm not gonna change his mind.
That's funny. Speaking of dad, February 27, 2014, and your life
Yeah,
change.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
talk about that.
yeah. We welcomed in a foster child to our home, and with the full on intention that he would be reunified with his parents. So we never went into this process to have to fully adopt. But this little boy came in, and he was 3.5 when we met him. And now we he is part of our family forever and ever and ever. And so yes, we met him when he was 3.5 in 2014, and then we finalized adoption in 2016, in June of 2016. And literally, like, we went to court, signed the papers on a Friday, and then on Monday we moved to Texas. So we were like racing against time to finalize adoption so that we could move to Texas without any further complications. But yeah, it's been a very wild and blessed ride having this little guy with us.
Hmm. What motivated you to become a foster father and eventually accepting him to your family?
Yeah, first of all, I was never like I never knew about the foster care system like that. You know, you only hear on shows or whatnot. But my wife was very open and curious about fostering, and it was something that she always wanted to do. And then one day we were like, all right, let's stop talking about it and let's start doing it. And so we went and we got certified, and then we were available for placement. So it was we just felt like maybe this was a good thing for us to do. And maybe like this was a way of God like pushing us in towards this direction. So that's why we went through the whole process. Yeah.
Hmm. He has autism, right?
Yes, he is on the autism spectrum, um, and uh, and he is just a ball of joy and full of life.
He's always
He is
smiling. I see his
13
video.
now. Yeah, he's 13 now. He's definitely taller than mom. He is almost tall as me.
You're in
And
trouble.
it's been really, yeah, but it's been really fascinating watching him grow
That's amazing.
and watching him mature and uh, seeing his personality develop more. And I can genuinely say that I've never seen someone so just happy with being alive. He is a constant reminder of joy. Even and sometimes it's annoying. I'm like, dude, no one can be this happy. Like, can I just like can I just like not be surrounded by your happy right now? But he doesn't know how not to be happy. And that's a that's a really blessed thing in my life, just to remind me that, you know, like there's always good and joy in the hope, good joy and hope in the world, and it's always present in my son's face with that smile of his.
I love that story that you tell about him being happy with eating cereals in the morning.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, like, he's just, you know, it's everything that we take for granted as adults. He just finds joy in it. Like he even when he's eating cereal by himself, he loves to have cereal. And if I'm joining him, he's even more excited. Everything is his lucky day. Everything is his favorite. Everything is I love it. So he's a very positive force, and I feel like I definitely need that in my life, and I think more people in the world need a positive presence in their life.
When do you know how to toughen him up and when you take it easy on him?
So yeah, that's a very good question. We're still learning. Um, you know, like I uh I think I ruined bicycles for him forever. Because I think I pushed too hard when he was trying to learn how to ride the bicycle, and I think I may have a little bit traumatized him. So
Is
like
that your
whenever I'm
Korean in
around, he
you?
doesn't want. Yeah, I feel like really guilty. I still feel guilty about it. I was like, I don't need to get mad over that because he wouldn't pedal, and I was like, just pedal the damn bike. But it's really a trial and error type of thing. And it's just constant. I think one of the things we need to do is just constantly remind him and be gentle but firm. And that's the hard part, like being firm with while being gentle. Um, and so uh, uh you know, like it's just do it over again, or we repeat it like, okay, did you like that? Did you do this? Did you do that? Are you going to do this? And then, and you know, like he hasn't. I mean, he's 13, so I'm hoping that but he's never thrown a temper tantrum in his life. He's never been like angry. His temper tantrum, the one time I saw him throw a temper tantrum is he just ran into his room and just stayed in his bed. He didn't cry, he just stayed in his bed. And I was like, oh. So like we haven't had there was never a reason to like discipline him in the way that my parents disciplined me.
Oh, that's a
But
different discipline.
yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't be able to do that to him. But a lot of times it's just us reminding him to use his words and communicate what you want. And like he has enough words to be able to express his feelings. So we just want to encourage him to use his words, and we're a little bit like, and so a lot of it is just me nagging, be like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, and constantly reminding him. But I have to. It's this one time, it's one of those things where like you're just annoyed and it just keeps building up, and he does nothing wrong, right? But it's just building up, and I kind of like yelled at him, and he looked at me like he was really scared, which I'm like, oh my God, like he was really shocked, and he says to me, "Why are you yelling at me?" And that like I was so shocked, and I was like, yeah, buddy, I'm so sorry. I don't know why. Please forgive me. Let's go get ice cream. But then like I'm really proud that he was able to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, man, I didn't do nothing wrong. Why are you yelling at me? It's just constantly reminding him that he has words, he can use it and whatnot. So and like it's the autism is a spectrum. So you have a lot of people who have kids that aren't verbal. You have a lot of people who have kids on the spectrum that are a bit more aggressive and whatnot. So each parent that has a child on the spectrum will have different stories to tell you about how they the things that they have to work through and whatnot, because each child is different. But we love him, and he brings us joy for the most part.
Have you found his superpowers? Because autistic kids, they have superpowers.
Uh, but yeah, it's really funny. He's able to I think one of it is being super happy all the time, but he just has this memory of things, like, but nothing that we can make money off of. So you go to like this one place once, like let's say you get gas at this Exxon like down the corner that's you just stop randomly. But he'll remember that spot. Like he'll just know about it. And he's like, oh yeah. And like I was like, I've been there before. And he's like, yeah, that's where we went. I was like, oh my gosh, like you remember that kind of stuff, but you can't remember, 2 + 2, that kind of stuff. So
Or brush your teeth, or
yeah,
clean your room.
yeah. So he's very, very he's very observant is I guess what we can say, but I can't make money off of that. So
Eventually, maybe.
well, if I'm having kids to make money off of them, maybe I shouldn't be a parent either.
Hey, that's what we want. Our kids to make a D1 athlete or something like that. We just have to wait. Okay.
Well, those dreams are up for us. He's never going to be a professional athlete, and that's okay.
Of course, Pastor Joseph, I think we're there. I don't want to take so much time off you. I really do appreciate your time and these stories. I love it.
Thank you.
Before we close out, do you have any last remark or anything that you would like to say?
No, this was such a good time, and thank you for having me. And I just want everyone to know that everyone matters to God, even if God may not matter to them.
Beautiful. Again, Pastor Joseph, thank you so much, and have a good evening.
All right, you too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Again, Joseph, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, listeners, for listening. This is Aaron Del Llosa for An Immigrant's Life. I'll see you guys later.